Today on Backstage Agents, we have John Hitch, who is a realtor in Mount Juliet with a background in video. He worked for CMT for quite a long time before transitioning full-time into real estate in 2016. And he's got a bunch of great tidbits about being in entertainment and on the video side of things and how he moved those skills into building a business for real estate. Tune in. It's a good one.
Check it out.
John Hitch, welcome to Backstage Agents.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man, it's fun.
Super stoked. We've known each other a while now. What I find interesting about what you do is you're super into the video side of things.
Yep.
And I am an idiot when it comes to video and all things social media. And so I found your Instagram super appealing. You do a really good job with that. And can you just describe to me your background and video, how you got into it, those sorts of things?
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate that. I guess I would tell you, anybody who's intimidated by it, I don't think anybody really knows what they're doing. A big thing for me is, when rates first started to tick up almost 2 years ago now, I started seeing these bigger gaps in my day. You can only cold call so much and reach out to past clients, do whatever. So I kind of, Instagram Reels was starting to become more of a thing. TikTok had its COVID pop, so you could see that was going to be big. And I was like, well, what could I do with the skills I have? And I kind of just started throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall. And in a way, I'm still throwing some stuff at the wall just to kind of see. But I always try to stay consistent. I try to post a video a day, whether that's beautiful homes here in Nashville, tips for buying a house, lifestyle stuff of my wife and I go to a bunch of concerts. So just downtown Nashville, kind of setting the scene of what we have here. I'm just always trying to keep the feed full. And if people come across me and see what I do and like it, maybe they'll reach out and say, we're thinking about buying a house.
Nice. Now you have a background in video, correct?
Yeah. So I actually graduated from Western Kentucky with a degree in broadcasting production. Eventually got me to Nashville, worked for CMT, so Country Music Television.
Yeah.
Part of the Viacom umbrella of MTV, VH1, all those things, and bounced around a few different positions in that company. Did some post-production, did some producing stuff, and eventually kind of transitioned full-time out of that into real estate. So it's been many years now, but there's still quite a few ideas and some creative things that kick around in my head that kind of spark me to want to just be involved in this. And I think that's a leg up I do have on most agents is like, I won't give up right away. And I think a lot of people who don't have a background in video or really anything tech-based tend to hit a speed bump right away. And they usually throw their arms up and say, I don't know what to do. This is too frustrating. And then they want to go to a marketing person, and that can get pretty expensive, a couple $1,000s a month even. So, I've just kind of said, this is a tool I have in my belt, and it's not really costing me any money, just the time it takes to do it. So I just try to stay consistent with it.
Nice. Yeah, I know. I wouldn't know what I was doing on this podcast if I didn't have Dan here to keep me going along, and Isaiah off screen in the background.
Our executive producer, Isaiah, is really the man.
Yeah. So it's a lot of work that goes into it. And when you were at CMT, what were you doing there?
Yeah. So eventually, I started out in the post-production department. And a lot of people, when they hear that, think they're doing video editing, but I came in around 2006. So it was a time when we were fully transitioning away from a tape-based linear media to a full digital media.
Okay.
And I think I had going for me, I was kind of the young guy that came in right out of college. And even though this was still kind of new to me, because we used DV Cam in college, I was on the front end of being like, well, okay, let's figure this out. So it was a lot of encoding media, getting it from one format to another. Eventually, we started shooting on full digital, so they bring in cards. So it's getting the cards into the edit systems. So you just kind of had to get familiar with workflows. Did a little editing here and there. And then eventually on the second half of my career, I was in more of an acquisitions of a producer standpoint and was doing things in that department. And then fully was out around 2016.
Nice. It's so funny you say like in 2006 the switch to digital, like that doesn't, it's not that long ago that happened, and it's wild how that's transformed the entire industry so quickly.
The biggest thing for me is when I came in and we were still in a tape-based world, it was very much a technical aspect of you had bars and tone, and you had to set up all your video levels to match a certain thing, and then you had all your audio levels to match a certain thing. And now we are seeing things that come out from content creators on Instagram and YouTube that people literally will shoot on their phone, and then they edit on their phone, and all the auto correction is done inside of app-based things. And it's the Wild West compared to what it used to be. We used to edit on, we would call them NLEs, but machines that cost thousands of dollars in order to operate them now. And now you can edit similar quality on your iPad.
Yeah. I remember that transition in music. I was still a young kid, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, that's when Pro Tools came to the forefront. And before that, everything was tape and people editing and splicing tape, and the technology got really good with that. But then Pro Tools came around early 2000s, and it flipped the industry on its head, where it went from everything tape-based to pretty much everything going on digital. And then the integration of hardware and software, and because Pro Tools definitely had a distinguishable sound for a while that wasn't necessarily pleasant, a digital sound.
Right.
But as the years have gone on, now it's the industry standard. So and again, it wasn't that long ago, and it seems like it happened.
And I guarantee you there were, even in that, there were early adapters who, younger people who probably grabbed onto it and then flourished. And I was kind of in that spot where like there was this transition really fast, and I was able to kind of understand the digital world and go into that. And now you've got kids who are 15 years old who've grown up with iPhones, who I see them do stuff on TikTok or Reels, and I'm like, I'll be honest, I wouldn't have thought of that, or I can't do that. Yeah. So, but it's an ever changing world. And then you talk about when DSLRs started shooting HD video, and I think that kind of changed the world. From, we're in Music City, so let's talk music, but like it allowed artists to start bringing camera people with them a lot and shooting stuff very efficiently. And it costs a lot less money, and then they're putting stuff out on YouTube. Consistent content. And I think that helped a lot of people grow their brands at a certain time, when prior to everything being digital, it was almost impossible to have like someone out shooting tape, and then editing that and digitizing that and doing it from a cost-effective standpoint, where artists who maybe don't have a budget for that could do that. So,
yeah, I don't. Any of the bigger artists, I think they all have at least one media person out with them now, who's just following them around with the camera. Which even when I started touring, which was a decade ago, you didn't see that, and now it's pretty much every big artist. They will have a media person even before they have a bass player, and a lot of for whatever reason, but you're seeing that a lot just to get that content out there.
And it's one of those things, like that job prior to the digital conversion we're talking about did not probably exist, where now is if a kid's coming out of college, he could probably DM 4 or 5 different up and coming artists. Is it Zach Top? Is he the new country guy that's kind of blowing up? Have you heard him?
I think that name sounds familiar.
A couple viral songs right now. Sounds super country. I love his sound. But like people could be DMing him and be like, hey, I will work for very low for you. Help me grow my reel and my brand. And then he could move on to another artist at some point. And like, it's a whole different job that didn't exist. It's one that I would have been doing if I was coming out of college right now. Every artist be like, hey, keep me fed, give me a place to stay. I'll give you 2 months, and I'll create all this content for you. And I think it could be a stepping stone for my career, which when I got out, it was like, you can go into news, or if you want to go to LA and try to do the movie or New York thing, or, you can do that too. There just weren't a lot of options that I feel like nowadays there are.
Yeah, because you said you got out in 2016, and I feel like that, like shortly after that is when I started really seeing that switch, like 2018, 2019, when media people in the touring world were everywhere. Yeah. And prior to that, like they would be out with us every now and then, maybe if they were grabbing some B-roll for a music video, something like that. But prior to like 2017, 18, I didn't really see too many of them unless the artist was giant. But now you have brand new artists who are bringing them out just to feed the content beast.
Well, it's like you said, it's almost an extension of the band now. You've got a 4-piece band. Well, now you've got a 5 because you've got a digital content creator all the time who is, I mean, that person's also probably keeping up with trends and trending sounds, and maybe it's coming to the artist to be like, hey, we need to do something with this now. It's kind of popping off. And, so it's a completely new job that within the past probably 5 to 7 years we've seen.
So how'd you get into real estate?
Yeah, so that's a really long or also short story. And I guess the short version of it is married in 2011, had our first kid in 2014. And my wife was always a very independent corporate lady. Hey, I'm going to be a working mom. I'm going to show, my kids that you can be a working mom. You can have both lives. Mm-hmm. We're like, cool, we're going to do that. So we were double income, one kid. Well, I always tell people don't make blanket statements before you have kids because you never know how kids are going to change your life.
Right.
And she said, essentially 6 months after we had a kid, that, hey, I'm thinking about if there's an opportunity for me to step away from a full-time job, no matter what that looks like, what would that be? So we kind of got her into a part-time position, and I said, I don't know what opportunities I have. I don't want to go back to school for something else that might pay me more. So I think like most people, I saw real estate as an opportunity. One that I could, study and take the test and find someone to help kind of guide me. And that was in 2015. I went ahead and got licensed. And by 2016, I was closing some deals. And then it was right into 2017, I kind of made that leap and stepped away from the team I was on and kind of went out on my own independently. And since then, I've been doing it full time. The other kind of longer version of it was even before she came to me with that discussion of, hey, I kind of want to be a stay-at-home mom. I was kind of just feeling like I was stuck in the spot I was. I'd been there since 2006, so almost 8 or 9 years. Bounced around a little bit, but didn't really feel like I'd positioned myself in a place to advance to where I wanted to be one day. And I was kind of looking around. People I graduated with had taken one job out of school and then moved to another job, really put themselves on a stepping stone path. So I kind of was like, I need to put myself in a position of no matter how hard I work, that's going to determine how successful I am. And I saw real estate as a way to do that. And it's kind of the way I've operated ever since.
Yeah, kids coming into the picture seem to be a reoccurring theme of how people, from the music business or television business, entertainment business.
Yeah, because you were songwriting.
Yeah, songwriting, and then I think of the other guests we've had. It's like, well, then we had a kid, and then I got my real estate license.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
This is really a support group for people making that transition. But that's cool, man.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, go into it too. They think there's going to be some flexibility, and depending on how you run your business, I guess there is, but I always tell people it's not easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy.
Yeah. I mean, just in my experience, you have some flexibility, but you need to be available more. Like you can't block off, I'm going to be working from 9 to 5 because you might get a client call at 7:30 because they're off of work.
Yeah.
And so like you might not be working from 3 to 5, but you might be working from 7 to 9. I got up this morning and at 7 a.m. had a text message about getting some pre-approvals out for somebody who's getting ready.
I hate getting woken up to the text message. That's the absolute
Is it
word.
ever good?
It's not. It's never. If somebody's texting you before 7 a.m., like something has gone wrong somewhere. So now
it's not good morning.
No, it's not a good morning.
Have a great day.
Yeah, no, and that's usually not a great way to start the day.
Yeah.
Best one says call me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when it's like, this isn't gonna be good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing, there's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about mainly realtors in the real estate world and what we do and the value we provide. And I kind of want to tell people, like, until you've done it full time, you can have an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion, but I don't think you should put people down, because at the end of the day, we work really hard for people and we don't get a paycheck until we've successfully done what that person hired us to do. And it takes a lot of, I want to say, guts to go out and start that career and essentially bankroll yourself to be successful.
Yeah, you're betting on yourself.
You are betting on yourself. And that's why they say a lot of people don't make it, past 2 years. And really the number's 5 years. They say if you've made it past 5 years, you're probably going to be successful for as long as you want to keep working. But a lot of people just can't make it past that 5-year mark.
Yeah, it's one of those things I've noticed that people, for whatever reason, I mean, it's obviously slow right now because of what's going on in the economy at large, but then you have people who just can't get past the inconsistency of the paychecks. And I think that's why musicians and people who are in the entertainment business are uniquely built for real estate,
Right.
because we've been paid like that
Yeah.
for our entire existence. But I see a lot of people, and I forget because I've never had a real job. So I forget that is something that people value, and then they'll freak out if they go a month or 2 or 3 without a closing. And I can see how that would be stressful for someone coming from a world where they're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know going back to what we were talking about, how I've transitioned from kind of a corporate television gig I was in to full-time real estate. For some reason, I always remember the biggest thing for me would be like, I just don't think I can do it because of the insurance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this was, and I hear that from people all the time. Like, yeah, usually if you're a biweekly W-2, you probably got company insurance and it's a great policy. But I mean, you're still paying for that out of a check. Like you're probably getting a good deal because the whole company's in it. But it was kind of like once I went to the people we went to get insurance, and I saw the numbers in front of me, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's not as bad as I thought. And then you just got to be able to convince yourself, like, all right, I'm paying myself.
Yep.
I'm going to, no matter what, I'm still going to close deals, but I'm still going to keep paying myself. And I think once you kind of flip that switch and, let go a little bit, kind of trust the process, I think that's when people really start to see success, honestly.
Yeah. And it is, I think a lot of people get in, especially during the pandemic, and jump in when it's kind of easier to grab money, and then it dries up, and then people start to freak out. But it is with anything. I mean, you're going to be at least 2 years of building something, because you started on a team, right?
So I started with a guy who is very much like me in my personality. And I say that because like, I'm not super salesy. I'm in this business to help people. And that's kind of how I got into it. I met a guy and he's like, have you ever thought about real estate? Absolutely not. Don't have a sales bone in my body. And he's like, no. He's like, if somebody's buying a $600,000 house, they don't need you to sell it to them. They need someone they know and trust to help guide them through the whole process. And I was like, well, I can maybe do that. And the guy I started with said, hey, if you get licensed, I'm starting a small group. You could be my first buyer's agent. And we had worked together in the past. He helped me buy my house. And, he was not hey, we're calling FSBOs on Monday and we're calling our database on Tuesday and we're doing this on Wednesday. If had been, it probably would have like totally turned me off to the industry, and I probably would have ended up doing something else. So that was just kind of a blessing too. I think kind of helping him helping me get started, being able to throw me some cool leads from his database that eventually turned into, buyers. And I was with him for about 1.5 years, and then eventually went full time into my working for myself.
Nice. Yeah. So you had that you were working with somebody, teaching you the ropes, figuring out how to build your business and make your business what you wanted.
He had the transaction coordinator. So like I wasn't thrown right into doing documents. I was like kind of giving her the information. Then we were working on them together, kind of guiding me through that process. Any questions that came up, like, hey, we got this going on. What do you think? He would obviously help me out there. So it was a great way to kind of help get me started in the business. And then 1.5 years in, I was able to say, all right, I'm gonna take it, and I'm gonna go from here, and have been solo ever since.
Nice. Yeah. And I know, because I'm coming up on 2 years doing mortgages, and it takes a while to develop relationships and get people in the way that, to refer you business and just develop all of that stuff. And music was very much the same. I had some really grand illusions when I moved to Nashville that it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a gig really quick and it's going to be great. And I'm going to be playing these stages. And instead I was just kind of eating shit for about 5 years and playing terrible gigs. And slowly but surely you start to work your way and trust the process. And
that's a perfect analogy also for real estate. I think when you get started out, whether you're a realtor or you're in the lending side of it, you're working a level of leads that is like, would be like playing on the corner of Broadway as opposed to playing Tootsie's or then playing Third and Lindsley or then eventually playing the Ryman. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of grab onto anything you can to stay busy and help get your business going. And like you said, it takes a couple years to establish those relationships and start closing deals.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, you obviously have a bunch of video skills and other skills, but what were the most important skills that you learned from your job at CMT in that world that have now translated into the real estate world and building your business?
I think the most important things, and I don't know if I've learned these from my other jobs or careers, but the biggest block I've built my business on is communication. I feel like no matter what happens during a transaction, as long as the client you're working with feels like you are 100% getting back to them as soon as possible and you have great communication and you tell them what's going on, I think you just set expectations that no matter what, I'm going to be here and we're going to get through this. Mm-hmm. And that's super important to me. I always say, no matter if you're a buyer or seller, the 3 pillars of my business are respect, expectations, communication. You know, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear all the time if I don't think it's good for the deal. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna respect you in that sense, and I hope that you will also return the same respect. I'm always gonna set expectations because I feel like as long as you set proper expectations, there's no room for disappointment. Yeah. Disappointment comes from when expectations don't meet the reality. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, communication. I feel like as long as people feel like, you know, you always hear these horror stories of buyers who like, hey, we'd like to go see this house, and my agent didn't get back to me for a day and a half, and the house was under contract. Mm-hmm. I always tell people we live in a digital world. We have small computers in our pocket now. Yeah. If you say, what do you think of this property? Even if we're in the middle of a podcast or doing something, I'm going to find a way within a couple minutes to like give you a thumbs up or long press and like it, just so you know, like, okay, John's got my back. He sees that I've sent him this. He's going to get back to me soon or something like that. And I think that goes a long way. And people remember that. So when it comes to referrals and they're like, well, if you want to have a great experience or you had a terrible experience with your past realtor, reach out to John. He's great at getting back to people.
Yeah. My favorite text message to send to people is, I acknowledge that I have read this, but I'm in the middle of something right now, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Yeah. And it's amazing how far even something that small goes, just making people not feel like they're left hanging with something that is a huge transaction and you're being bounced around between lenders, insurance, you know, all kinds of people just to get the transaction across the finish line. Right. And just to have that extra step of making people feel super comfortable is super valuable. And it's something that I don't see in a lot of agents where, you know, I'll be getting questions. It's like, well, they should have answered this for you. This isn't something that I should be answering for you. And I'll see that from time to time. It's not super common for me, but every now and then it's like I'm left scratching my head a little.
So you've made time every day probably because you're like producing the John Show,
right?
615
Nashville_realtor 615 on Instagram. Okay. Yeah.
So you have your own TV show in a sense,
in a way, yeah.
Right. And how do you? 2 things. How do you make time? Do you make time for, like, are you structured with that? And then like, this is when I'm going to make the show. This is when I'm going to deal with clients. Or is it just all like liquid?
I should be better. The days when I can pre-bank like 3 or 4 pieces of content, and I know like I've got Monday here, I've got Tuesday here, I've got Wednesday here, and I can wake up in the morning, have my caption ready to go, and just post it, is great.
Gotcha.
There are days where I'm scrambling, going through my camera roll, being like, what do I got? We went to Chris Stapleton this weekend. Can I do anything with that? I've got all these cool shots of Broadway. Maybe I can do some kind of font on screen engagement. Coming to Nashville for the weekend, check out these 3 bars. And, you know, you want people to get in your captions and save your video. So things like that tend to boost the algorithm a little more.
But it's paying off.
I mean, it's paying off. You know, I mean, obviously you've got people with 50,000, 10,000 followers. You know, I'm almost 1,100, something like that. But I started the year 2 at 300, you know, so like it's a slow burn. Yeah, I think it's kind of like we were talking earlier, getting into real estate. Trying to grow on social media, I feel like if you think that is something that's going to happen to you within a couple weeks, unless you do something super viral, you know, you fall down a hill into a river or something.
Have
and
you
like,
thought of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you could meme, if I could meme that, yeah, I might do that. Yeah,
I have ideas.
You know, it's just it's going to be a lot of work and a slow burn, and I think that's where a lot of people in our industry get burnt out on it. Yeah. Is like, oh, I'm not seeing anything from this. It's taking up too much time. I'm either going to quit or now I'm just going to pay somebody to do it. And I've just had the luxury where I've had the time and the background to be like, well, I'm just going to stick with it. And I've done things. I tried to do like the very cheesy, like full voiceover videos of like, I'm not really a day in the life, but doing, and it just wasn't my style. And I'm still trying to figure that out. I do a Monday market update. It's like the only time I really put myself on camera and talk. And I feel like it brings value to people. It gives actual stats every week, but everything else after that is just about Nashville, moving here, things that would interest people in moving here. So that's kind of the way I set it up every day. I go through what I've got on my phone, and a lot of times I might dedicate 30 minutes a day just to going through Instagram or TikTok and being like, that's a pretty cool idea, save it. And then I'll go back through those saves when I have time in the evening, be like, what can I do with this?
So the best way for people to find you and showcase what you do would be Instagram?
I feel like, I repurpose everything from Instagram and throw it to TikTok, but it's so crazy how different one video could do super well on Instagram and it won't do well on TikTok. And then a video that does great on TikTok will not do well on Instagram.
They're very different.
They are, yeah.
Different. It might be the same crowd, but there's a different personality that comes out, it seems like, on TikTok.
Yeah, and I feel like the people who want to be bigger on one or the other go all in on that.
Right.
And I do think my videos do better usually on Instagram, so I kind of stick to that. And it's just to put it on TikTok just to have a presence there.
Right.
But I haven't seen nearly as much engagement or growth on TikTok as Instagram.
Gotcha. And do you do anything with Facebook, or are you pretty much just TikTok, Instagram?
Pretty much just TikTok. I think Instagram might auto post to Facebook, but it goes to my business realtor page, which I feel like is very hard to find for some reason. Zero engagement. If anything, if I have a video I feel like it's going to do really well, I might post it to my personal Facebook.
Gotcha.
LinkedIn, people used to post on there. I haven't seen much engagement, but
it's interesting that this is how I saw you guys interact in a similar type of setting. I don't know if you were interviewing him. And I remember talking to Chris. I'm like, that looked cool, man. Like, what are you guys doing?
It might have been the thing we did at the end of the year.
Yeah, it was the end of last year. That was kind of my first foray into like doing anything on video, because even when I was playing music, I've always just shied away from doing anything on video for whatever reason. I've really old school in every sense of the descriptor there. And I've always been with business. It's like, the people who know who I am are going to call me, and I don't need to be out there on video. And the last thing the world needs is another podcast or another person posting videos of themselves playing. But at the end of last year, again, things are slow. So it's like, let's just kick this around. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in doing it. And I actually found that after posting a few of those, they got quite a bit of engagement and started some conversations with people. And then I kind of had to sit there and go, maybe there is something to this. I'm not going to pivot and just put everything into this, but I can see how it's valuable as a part of everything else that I'm doing. And it was kind of the spot where the birth spot of where I was like, maybe sitting down and doing like an actual long form podcast would be cool. Because when we sat down, it was more of just, all right, this is what's happening right now. Let's talk about let's just talk about these. But especially with everything going on in real estate right now with the NAR settlement, which I think this weekend, tomorrow is the day for that. Just sitting down and having a real long form conversation with people just to showcase who they are as a person, because at the end of the day, you do business with people, whether that's music or real estate or marketing, you name it, you're doing business with people. And so I was sitting here and I was like, maybe it'd be fun just to sit down and do some long form conversations. And Dan kind of told me, he's like, man, you have a cool story, cool people, like be cool to have people on. And so then I was like, Dan, why don't you come and you suggested it. So now you get
absolutely. This, I can say hands down. I mean, what we did last time was fine, but this format to me is so much, I feel like, comfortable and more engaging, because at the end of the day, nobody really wants to watch a realtor and a lender just set each other up to talk about stats that happened that month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'll be obsolete in 2 months.
It'll be obsolete in 2 months. Yeah. So unless you're really
be you forever,
right?
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
Unless your video idea has me changing and stuff, I'm still open to whatever.
I'm gonna make that bet. Bet on that.
And I will say, talking about Christian and how we got connected going way back. So he just showed up at my open house one day, and I got real excited that like I was like, oh man, we got somebody coming in. So I did the whole engagement thing. Like, hey, what can you do? He's like, oh, I'm actually a lender, and I was like, oh, okay. And what connect, because I mean, obviously lenders reach out to realtors all the time trying to solicit business and get to know each other. And he said, well, I have a background in music, and my ears just perked up.
That's right.
Because like I've lived here since
Did he
06.
bring his bass?
He's like, by the way, he just pulled it out. Let me do a solo set for you, and it was just
knock knock.
Yeah. But I'm a music nerd. Of when I meet industry people in any way, shape, or form, I'm just like, talk to me, tell me your stories. Let me hear the behind the scene, you know, all the stuff of like, I've been on the road. Oh, he's a cool guy. I mean, I'm not going to mention names on here, but like you've told me some crazy stories of people who have spent the night at your house. Yeah. And I was just like, what? Like that's crazy that like, and so like that's the reason I was like, well, this dude's pretty cool. Like let's follow up with him, and we've had the opportunity to hopefully work a couple more deals here down the road. We've got people in the pipeline who have been taking a while, but they're eventually going to get there. So yeah.
But yeah, it's super fun, and that's how I do things. It's like that's super organic way of just like I like to meet people. That idea, Dan was like, you should just drop into open houses, man. And so that was
bought a suit.
Yeah.
Off he went.
Yeah. And but I can see how video helps being in front of people, and then especially for people who are my age and younger and looking at buying at houses, they'll go and look you up on Instagram. I mean, I do this when I get called for a new gig. The first thing I do is like, who's on this gig? Who are the players on this gig? And then I go and I'll do my homework, and just to wrap my head around mentally what kind of situation I'm going to be walking into. And if I'm doing that with music, I definitely know people are doing that with the lenders or real estate agents, and might not be everybody, but I think as the younger generation gets into home buying age, it's going to be less Google reviews and more going to people's Instagram or TikTok. I mean, like, who is this person and what are they all about?
Well, if I have to quickly, if I need to fix something in my house, I no longer Google how to fix it. I'll usually go to TikTok, because I know they sit, 60 seconds usually is the max, or maybe a little more now. But like, I know that whatever comes up is like going to be a shorthand video for me to be like, okay, I get what they're doing, or I need to investigate this more, whatever. So yeah, I think that is going to be the main search engine moving forward. It's just gonna be funny to see if like there's a divide of like all people this age are on Instagram, all people this age are on TikTok, and who do you want to target? But
I think you saw that with Facebook and Instagram.
Oh yeah,
because now it's like people in our age range were Instagram heavy, and then people who are
Facebook is wild. I'm just gonna say, if people are still actively on Facebook every day, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's my parents. It's
very personal.
And it's scary, like how people can get convinced to be like, I want to be like, this isn't a real photo. Like, we all know this, right? Like, you see a lot of this stuff get shared, and I'm like, oh man, you get in the comments, and some people are like, I was like, oh golly.
I know some people that my parents are around and that I grew up around. Like, if somebody says it on Facebook, it could be that there are Martians on Mars. They're going to believe that it is real if they see it on
Well, have
Facebook.
you seen the thing that now they're like satire accounts? Like, they don't even try to say they're real, but they will create like Canva looking headlines, and it'll be like, big country artist turns down X amount of $1 million to play the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then the comments is like 500 comments. People are like, good for him, good for her, or whatever else. Like, I won't go woke is the title, or something like that.
Yeah. So I saw that actually happened with that Turkish Olympic shooter. So
the guy who wasn't like wearing any
the
glasses.
guy who wasn't wearing anything. So it was a meme, or kind of like a satire account, of just a sports satire account. And so they published that story just as a joke that, it was because of his ex-wife and all this stuff. Yeah. And it turns out that really none of that was true.
Right.
And he had to come out later and be like, guys, like, this is not a true story. I was hoping by people looking at the account that they would figure out, but because it caught on like wildfire. I mean, I remember that after he won silver, it was like the next day I was seeing all these crazy stories, and I was like, this is cool. And then looked into it a little bit further, and I was like, oh, there are parts of this that are true, But largely, this is just a guy who
Yeah.
was poking some fun at this, and because the internet is what it is, it took off.
And you can't really blame people because, I mean, obviously the internet, but like social media came in such a wave so fast. Like no one was given an instruction manual on how to properly use it and understand it and like sort out kind of what's going on here. So like, it's just some people it's real, and you know, and like it's kind of scary when you think about it. But
oh yeah.
His is real. If you want to go to,
but my social media is real.
Yeah.
No, it is. There's exceptions, right?
Yeah. There's definitely
You
exceptions.
being one.
Yes.
Yeah. And so aside from the social media, you are handling a lot of out-of-town buyers. How are you using your video skills to make that process as easy and seamless for them? Because obviously when you have out-of-town buyers, they can either not come to town at all, or it's really compressed time frame. Like you get a day or two that they're coming to town. And so I would imagine that you're using your skills in video to either show them properties entirely or narrow down the properties that they want to see. Can you walk us through your process with that a little bit?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, we were already out of the COVID, shutdowns, but we just saw that influx of people coming to Middle Tennessee and Tennessee in general. And it really is the type of buyer you described that like they come in for 2 days and, whether their jobs relocating, maybe they're just moving here, whatever. And I was seeing these people who was putting this enormous amounts of pressure on themselves. Like, well, we've got to buy a house before we leave here. And there was just my first kind of success couple that I was like, well, what if you don't have to buy a house before you leave here? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Because we had done FaceTimes before. And, if you've got a realtor who's doing a FaceTime for you and you're moving from out of state, I'm sorry, but it's just not the best representation of a house. There's so many issues. You've got connectivity issues. Maybe you're up in Robertson County and you're in a valley and you don't have a good cell issue and you've got a poor quality. You're trying to schedule usually a husband and wife or partner or whatever. Hey, can you all get on at 1:00? I'm going to be there. Yeah. Okay. And, so like I told these people, I was like, let me show you what I can do for you. Let's use these 2 days to still go look at houses. Let's get to Mount Juliet. Let's go to Hermitage. Maybe we'll check out some in Bellevue. Maybe we'll do, we'll get to know the areas. And they were real standoffish about it and didn't feel comfortable with it. And essentially I was able to go once they got back, and I do a full video walkthrough. I talk in the video walkthrough just like they're standing right beside me. Hey, it looks like this trim here is pretty beat up, this room's, decent size, but with your table you talked about, this dining room's going to get pretty small. Edit it all together. But then I also include like driving around the neighborhood. So we're driving in the front of the neighborhood. We're doing a full 360 outside. Here's what your neighbor's house looks like. Dude's been changing his oil for 6 weeks. Just want y'all to know that kind of thing's going on. There's amenities up here. Hey, you've got a pool. We got a clubhouse. Here's a weight room. But it's all edited together as one seamless video, usually 15, no more than 20 minutes. And what I do is I send that to them in a private link. So then that way they have access to it and you can pull it up on your smart TV. You're watching it at home at your convenience after work. And the link never expires. Whereas if you do a FaceTime with somebody, once you hit end on that phone call, it's gone. So in 2 weeks, if that home's still on the market and you're like, we thought about it, we are interested in, 123 Banana Street. Well, now I've got to go do another FaceTime. But for these people, they don't, because they've still got that link saved where they can just go back and access it. And I think once it connected, they were like, oh. So I do a guarantee. If you tell me at 1 p.m. on a Friday that, hey, we want to see this video and you're out of state, by 1 p.m. Saturday, you'll have the link in your, I can guarantee you that.
Nice. And
it was like they were here in person. They were just searching our MLS. Hey, well, can you do this? And it took 3 videos and we had them under contract.
Nice.
So like, and they loved the house. They came in for the inspection. They loved it. And they're like, it opened up so much more possibilities because people will put this stress on themselves of buying a house over a weekend. All right, what if you put a contract on a house on Sunday that you're not really crazy about, and then on Tuesday you see your dream house is now active? You're going to hate the house you have a contract on forever. You're probably going to find a way to get out of it, or you're just going to have resentment if you close and be like, well, I wish we would have waited 2 days. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to get people to understand through my videos, that if you're moving here, like, let's just have that conversation. Because I'm not doing, it's not extra. Yeah. Any agent who's going to work hard for you is going to work hard for you, but I'm going to bring this extra piece to make your experience a little better and hopefully create less stress when you're trying to move from 1,000 miles away.
Nice. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks for joining us on Backstage Agents. I think that's a good spot to wrap this up. Man. It's been wonderful talking to you about social media and video and your background.
Yeah, man. I appreciate y'all having me. Like I said, this was fun. I like kind of just more the laid back and let's see where it goes and hanging out. And maybe next time we'll do a cigar.
Heck yeah. Dan and I are the king of laid back. So
all right.
That's
perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
John. Thank you, John.